Okay, we are live. I haven't done this in a while, but today we are talking about overthinking and looking stupid. Let's talk about it. This was brought up simply because I had a moment personally where it was my friend's birthday. One of her friends who I didn't know, but she was passing out cupcakes and asking people, "Hey, do you want a cupcake? Do you want a cupcake?" And then she came to me and then she asked, "Hey, do you want a cupcake?" And I just stared at her. And then she felt awkward. I felt awkward. she said, "Okay." And then she moved on. But in reality, what was going through my head was a million thoughts because I was thinking, can I afford to have a cupcake in terms of calories because I've been on a strict diet? Maybe this is the exception to the rule. Just because it's my friend's birthday, how many calories are there? Is it appropriate to ask how many calories are there? Is it appropriate to ask what the nutritional facts look like? Uh, should I take it? Should I not? What are the risks? What are the rewards? And I was just having so many thoughts in my head. Even though it was technically a yes or no question, it wasn't as easy to me as a yes or no answer. And so I feel like we have these times a lot where we just overthink so much. And on the other person's side, they're thinking, What is wrong with you? Why are you not answering me?" Uh, but there are those times. And so I just want to take you through usually what I would do, which, by the way, you're never obligated to answer any question from anyone, which is something that I've been personally enjoying, is just not answering people when it's appropriate to do so. Sometimes people ask questions that you don't need to answer. And I've been learning this, especially just going on the dating world out there. You don't need to answer anything. But what I would have done is, first of all, level one being expressing your inner monologue. And that could look like, "Oh, I don't know if I can get that cupcake just because I've been watching my weight lately. But you know what? Let me just think about it and maybe get back to me in a little bit." Right. So that's just expressing your inner monologue instead of simply standing there and staring at the individual. Would have been better, would have been less awkward. But then level two is to just start with the conclusion. You can always change your mind later. So, what I mean by that is, I would have said, "You know what? No, thank you." And then if I wanted to change my mind later, it's not like I can't change my mind later. But I like to start with the conclusion, keeping in mind my best self, right? What would my best self do? She would probably say, "No, thank you." But when that competes with my not so best self and my desire of wanting that cupcake, I might say, "Ooh, maybe I do want the cupcake. Maybe I don't." And then I get into this tuffle. So that's really what would happen. Hi, Xylon. Thank you so much. You learned a lot from me. That's really sweet. Thank you so much. Okay, so going into another piece that I wrote down just in case. I mentioned earlier that I have been dating lately, and dating has been it's been a challenge to say the least. Not so much having conversations with people, but more so the activity of finding people to talk to and match with. It's a whole thing. But that aside, I did notice something interesting. I've only been doing it for 2 weeks now, so it's not, I mean, it's new. But that being said, I did run into a lot of similar questions, which I think is normal when you're talking to somebody new, right? And so in the States, people ask you, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" Or "What do you do for work?" Which I always find it to be an awkward question because, number one, typically I don't even like to answer that because what I do for work, sometimes people judge it. I almost never mention I'm on YouTube in any type of way because I don't want people to look me up and then look at my videos and then draw a conclusion based off of that, right? I want them to get to know me as I am there in the present moment. And then I also have, I help other people with their YouTube. So I don't want to mention that either, because typically that either generates this weird, oh, that's not a real job, or it gets them excited. And then they have questions for me of, oh, how do you grow a YouTube channel? And I don't really want to go into that route because that to me is work, which I love, but I want to get to know you as a person, right? So I tend to want to avoid that. So at first, I was just avoiding the question in general of, oh, and I would just say digital marketing because everything I do would fall under digital marketing and it's general enough. And I would say, oh, I just do digital marketing. And if they ask further questions, I used to say, well, I'm not comfortable answering that. Just moving on, which sometimes some answers are just weird answers, but I stuck with it because I just didn't want to talk about it. Another level more than that, I would say, is that, oh, I do various things in YouTube, and then just redirect it back to them of, hey, but what do you do? Or what's going on with your work? I'm actually way more interested in what you're about, which is absolutely true. I'm definitely way more interested in other people when I'm trying to get to know them. So that's something that you could definitely do in terms of avoiding some sort of blank mindedness or total shutdown, which is really hard when we're trying to have an ongoing conversation with somebody. You don't want to completely shut it down without moving on to something else. So, something that I've learned because I've enjoyed shutting down conversations so much lately is that, okay, if I want to continue to have a conversation with this person, then I can absolutely shut down answers, questions, and lines of conversations that they may lead me to. But if I do that, now I carry the responsibility of moving the conversation forward. And so I have to redirect it. And then if they feel a little bit off, and I have to look at their micro expressions to see if that felt weird to them, if it isn't in person, not over text, then I would just simply do a one sentence explanation of, hey, I don't really feel comfortable talking about that right now for various reasons I'd love to get into in the future, but new question here or new line of conversation here. That's helped me a lot. So they know that I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to shut them down. I'm just trying to shut the conversation itself down because I simply don't feel comfortable with it. So giving a little background story of that. Anyway, that's all I have here today. Must be challenging, especially having a YouTube channel. Yeah, I just feel like sometimes people make weird judgments based off of that, or they think it's easy money, even though what I do is a little bit different than maybe being a Twitch live streamer. And that, by the way, Twitch live streamers, I can't talk right now. Twitch live streamers, I know a few people, and that is a lot of work. Thank goodness I don't do that. But there is a perception that it's easy money. And certainly a lot easier than a lot of jobs out there. And especially because we're in certain economical times, I also want to be sensitive to that and be appreciative of what I have. But it's really hard to talk about it if you're not already working in my industry. So you understand already certain aspects of it that is good and that is certainly not so good. But it's not something I want to get into on a dating app, let alone on a first or second date. Is just not where it's at. And also, I am more than my work. And when it comes to personal relationships, I really don't care, but I do care about your character. I do care about your values. And that's what's the most important to me, not how much you make, what you do. And certainly how you do things will be determined by your character, by your value, right? You can make some sort of conclusion based off of that, but I've been unemployed. Does that make me any less of a person or any less of a person who's always there for somebody? You know what I mean? So I just don't want to get into that in dating. Anyway, there's that. If you have any questions on having moments of drawing a blank mind, let me know. Otherwise, I think this is it for me. I just wanted to pop on here just because I haven't done a live stream in a while and I haven't even posted content in a while. So I just thought, let me just do it and I'll be here. But really, thank you so much, Xylon, for commenting what you have. It really means a lot to me just because when we're recording, I don't get to talk to anybody. It's just recording and I post and that's it. So, has reading helped you? Yes. In general, reading has helped me. I will say, and this is something I tell my clients all the time, is, and this is based off of me doing it itself, is reading out loud. And reading out loud is such an old school trick. And I used to hate it as a kid. If you live in the States, you might know popcorn reading. So this is when back in, I don't know, fourth grade, third grade, we would do this thing called popcorn reading where let's say one student will read one paragraph and then you call out somebody else, Rachel, and then Rachel would read the next paragraph and then Rachel would call out another person, Scott, and then Scott would read another paragraph. And while you're reading and you're doing this popcorn style reading where you call people out, it's it's the worst feeling in the world because number one, you do not want to be called upon. Why am I doing public speaking at school right now? That's how it felt. And then number two, you don't want to mess up when you're reading out loud because it's embarrassing. But anyway, what was not so great of an experience as a kid, I think it just ends up being helpful as an adult. So yes, reading out loud has helped. I also suggest that if you have a YouTuber, not even a YouTuber, but if there's somebody that happens to have a lot of videos online of them speaking publicly or speaking in an interview that you want to speak like, I would highly suggest that you play their video, put on the captions, and try and match their prosody of their voice. So a lot of men come to me for whatever reason. So typically you will not want to speak like me, right? Because you might have a different ideal. So let's say you want to speak like Patrick Bet David is a good one. A lot of people want to speak like him. So you turn on his video, let it play, put the captions on, and try to match the way he's speaking. What that does is two things. So number one, you actually get to adopt the musicality, the pacing, and the tonal inflections of his voice. But number two, without you even knowing, you tend to take on his posture. And that's the most important thing. Usually it's subconscious. I like to work with people consciously. But essentially, he sits in a certain way when he speaks. And the mouth posture, the body posture, even the way he'll tilt his head, you'll just start to do those things naturally when you start to match somebody's prosody. You take on their body movements. You embody, quite literally, what they are and who they are. So if you see somebody who you think they're really confident or they're really charismatic, whatever you're going for, part of it is just embodying who they are. And the easy way to do that is to match their voice, because you can't match their voice without taking on their embodiments. The reason why sometimes as a joke, maybe amongst you and your friends or family members, you'll recite something you saw on TikTok or something you saw in a movie and you're quoting somebody. And when you quote them, you don't just say the quote, you embody that character in order to say that quote. It's the same exact concept. And the more that you do that, the more that it becomes your muscle memory. And the point is, you want to make it part of your muscle memory. What you practice every day becomes who you are. And so, especially this is really good if you're an introvert, since you don't talk to many people. And then if you practice, let's say repeating somebody, you're copying somebody, caption, da 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 da. Now, the majority of the time you're communicating verbally is when you're practicing. And you do that, let's say for 1 week straight. And so 80% of your communication has been you matching somebody, what do you think will happen when you actually go out there and you order a drink at a coffee shop or you go to the grocery store? Your body is now in this new embodiment. And of course, the more you do, it might take more than a week, but the more you can do that, the more your body just sits there. Definitely an introvert. Yes. Yeah. I'm definitely an introvert too. And it's interesting because Dr. Andrew Huberman, he was talking about how whether you're an introvert or an extrovert is highly dependent on what you exercise in your brain. I don't know the details, so don't quote me on this. You could probably Google it very easily. But essentially, it's that you have to practice talking a lot and socializing a lot. And the more that you do, not that you have to, but the more that you do, the more extroverted you become. And then the less that you do, the more introverted you become. So it's quite literally a mechanism within your brain, because at the end of the day, we are social animals, and socializing, communicating, and feeling connected and bonded with people generates a level of dopamine and good hormones in our brain. And our brain seeks that because we're social addicts, so to speak. But because of that, and just like any addiction, the more you do something, the less of a dopamine hit you might get. So extroverts, they actually have to talk to more people in order to get the same amount of happiness and connectedness, the feeling of connection, than somebody who's introverted. Somebody who's introverted, you don't need to have that many connection points and you will feel satisfied. So it's not that one is better than the other, but if you find yourself feeling disconnected, it's because you're not hitting the dose that you need, essentially. But over time, the less that you need it, the less you'll need, right? Or the less that you do, the less you'll need. And innately, there are people who are more prone to extroversion and more prone to introversion, but it's definitely a scale. And you might remember a time in which, hey, I felt more extroverted in this scenario, or more introverted in this scenario, or in this season of my life versus that season of my life. That's what it is, because we're not stagnant. It actually fluctuates based off of what we do. How do you deal with talking in groups? I'm always afraid. I talk in group meetings, and since I'm usually talked over anyway. Well, I think those are two different things. So talking in groups socially versus talking in group meetings, so it's a workplace. Those are separate. But let me talk about talking in groups in socially, let's say. So socially, it depends on what you're going for. I'm always afraid to talk. So sometimes you just have to talk and be okay with people talking over you. It depends. But I had this experience recently where there's this person who would just not stop talking. They didn't leave a gap long enough for you to comfortably step in and give your opinion or give a different thought process or add on to what they said, right? And there are people like that. But in order to, there's a certain moment where they finish their thought, but they want to keep going. That's when you can interrupt them and allow them to talk over you. Oh, that makes sense. And it could just be a simple acknowledgement, right? Oh, that makes sense. And so that's warming you up and warming them up. It's letting them know, hey, I would like to talk as well. Oh, right. Oh, I understand that. Oh, I get that. So those little tidbits where it's actually okay for them to talk over you because you're really just agreeing. And sometimes people will stop because they realize, oh, wait, they're talking. Let me pause. Let me stop. But not everybody is as socially conscious as that. So as you do that, maybe 1 or 3 times, if they completely do not stop, I actually just start talking and I finish my sentence. I actually got this from Charisma on Command, where if you even find a millisecond of a gap moment, so they end their thought technically, I would just say an opinion for a sentence and say, let's just say, oh, I agree with that because last week I had that same exact experience, right? I end my sentence and imagine them still talking over me. Typically, by the end of my sentence, they realize, oh, wait, that person is talking. Maybe I should. And then I'll do that a few times. Sometimes people are a lost cause, but typically that's all it takes. And then they'll either ask you, oh, wait, what do you mean by that? Or they'll pause so you can talk. So that's how I do it. Uh, at work currently can't stay just you're at work coming in. Hello. Yes. Okay, so speaking of work, if it's at a work group meeting, similar thing, same thing if it's in person. Actually, same exact thing if it's in person. But what you can do is physical signals, right? So you could do something like this. You could do something like, right? So these are verbal body language indicators that you're wanting to say something without actually saying something. And typically, when people see that, they'll go, oh, what were you about to say? Oh, Tina, were you about to say something? Because you're giving them an indicator. It's this, right? Or if it's, let's say, on Zoom or some sort of, Google Meets, what have you, you can unmute yourself and people can see unmute. It just depends on the situation. Unmute yourself and then do the similar thing of saying, oh, yes, I agree to that. What if I may say one thing, right? You could do one of those asking for permission, depending. It really just depends on the situation. Yeah, but if you have anything in particular, let me know. But those are great ways to put your foot in the door, so to speak. But if it's just speaking in general, it goes back to the introversion and extroversion. The more you do, the more you feel comfortable doing, and the more you actually will seek to do. You'll notice in meetings or even in social groups, there are always the people who they're they love it, right? They relish in it, they thrive in it. It's those people that maybe at one time, and I would say that's true for me, I was not. I'd rather stay silent. I would just look at people and nod my head. Oh, okay. But it's also because you haven't practiced, right? And so the less you practice, the less you feel comfortable doing it. And I found that once the pandemic hit, and this happened across the board with most people I knew, even who don't have any communication issues, social issues, but because everybody became a forced introvert, so to speak, and they didn't have as much practice communicating with people in real life, it brought them to become a little bit nervous and feel social anxiety, which they haven't felt since they were in elementary school or in middle school. And they came to my channel because of that, even though they've never really experienced it before since childhood, let's say. And so I found that interesting because that goes back to what Dr. Andrew Huberman mentioned in a study that wasn't his, but he mentioned it of, yeah, you practice what you are, whether it's being able to communicate and you're extroverted in that sense, and you want to socialize and you're seeking that dopamine hit, and talking to people is not enough. So you have to talk to more and more people, right? Versus the introvert person who it doesn't take that much because you're already filled and that's already the max capacity. Great, great, great. Okay, well, it was really nice hanging out with everybody. This was really nice. Thank you so much. What do you think about saying random thoughts to help you think quick on your feet? It depends on the scenario, of course, because if it's with your friends, absolutely. That's what makes it fun. That's what charismatic people do. In a workplace, it's a little bit harder. And of course, it depends on the culture of the workplace. But ultimately, I like to take a look at what's his name? The guy from Thor, but not Thor, his brother, Loki. Yes. Loki is the prime example of somebody with charisma. And ultimately, it comes down to exactly what you're saying, Xylon, of saying your random thoughts to help you think quick on your feet. Sometimes, and this is perfectly scripted, and it goes hands down to the writers of whoever writes for Loki. I mean, it's multiple people, I'm sure, but he'll start to say things and then he'll end it in a way that's just funny, but it's only funny because it's his truth. And that's it. He's actually saying what he's actually thinking. And we often don't do that. And that's what makes it comedic, which I'm wrong or right. That's the case. But it depends on the situation, of course. If you feel comfortable doing that, I would say yes. That's step number one. And it's funny because I don't know if I went over this. I had a note on the side of saying it's good to have common answers to common questions, right? So, for example, what's your favorite movie? You should already have a movie selected in your head. And so my selection is Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is my favorite movie. And then if somebody asks further on it, then I can speak on it. But the point being that a lot of times people who think on their feet, they just have pre-selected answers to nearly everything. And the little tiny moments in which they can improv, now that they've spoken, right? So now that I said Forrest Gump, because I'm in the practice and I'm in the muscle memory of, oh, now I feel comfortable speaking. And that felt comfortable for me because it was a pre-selected word, it was a pre-selected answer. Now I feel more comfortable having an impromptu conversation, which is just a regular conversation. So I love pre-selected answers, especially something like, oh, how was your weekend at work? People ask that all the time. I hate that question, but I always have a pre-selected answer to that question. And it shouldn't be, I don't know, right? It should be, oh, I had a great time getting a latte at my local coffee shop. And from there, if I wanted to, I can keep talking because now I feel comfortable talking because I'm warming up, not just my body, my mouth, but my mind to feel comfortable. And I feel at ease saying that. In the moment you allow yourself to feel at ease speaking, the more fluent you become. So speaking of, I know I talk about verbal fluency all the time, but speaking of being fluent and your verbality, so to speak, is just feeling comfortable saying anything at first. So absolutely. Can't see this. How to improve self-respect in the long run. Self-respect in the long run, I think that just comes down to keeping the promises you make to yourself. So if I tell myself that, hey, I am going to consume under 1,500 calories a day, that's what I'm doing right now. It's actually a little bit less than that. Then I'm going to do it. But making myself be in a winning position of, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to check in to see how I feel. I think the mistake a lot of people make is that they overcommit to something and then they underperform because you were just making a goal that was too audacious. And then if you do that over time a lot, you're going to begin to think that you're a loser, essentially, and you're going to lose respect for yourself. But it's also because you've set unrealistic expectations for yourself. It's just like a partner. If I set an unrealistic expectation for them, they're going to fail no matter what. They cannot surpass. And so I'm going to disrespect them because I have this unrealistic expectation. So same thing for yourself is that if you have that unrealistic expectation, oh, I'm supposed to be this, or I'm supposed to be here in life, or I'm supposed to be here right now, or I'm supposed to do it this way. And if that doesn't match the reality of the situation, and you have to be honest with yourself, and true to, okay, can I actually do that? Or can I make a smaller goal? And so I can achieve that and then go from there. Hello, only 500 calories? No, not 500 calories. That would be too little. Too little. I'm at 1200 calories a day. What is your locus of control while going in social situations? What do you mean specifically of locus of control? So, what I always fall back to if I'm nervous, and this happened to me when I had a public speaking event I had to go to for HubSpot, and I was really, really nervous. This was the first one after the pandemic. So everything shut down. Nobody was doing public speaking, no public events. So it was my first one. I was nervous because it was my first one since the pandemic, but also it was amongst women who I deemed, it was women in tech. I was not in tech. Technically, I had a YouTube channel. I guess they categorized that as tech, but absolutely not. These women had multi-million dollar businesses. So I definitely felt out of place. But in that situation, I recognized that I felt nervous. Heart was pounding. I was sweating. I really wanted to just seclude like this. So I went into my breath and I went into my posture, because going back to what I said earlier about taking on the posture, embodying the type of person that you want to embody, whether it's through somebody else and mimicking them, or eventually you just know what that looks like for yourself. So I know what that looks like for myself kinesthetically. So I would go into that posture. So I went into that posture and then I slowed down my breath. And one thing I did do to quickly slow it down is, this is my little hack, is that I basically attempt to slow down my blood flow by just squeezing on this really hard. And your thumb specifically, there's something that happens there. I know this is proven when you're car sick. If you want to do this when you're car sick, it actually helps with car sickness or seasickness. So this is what I originally learned it from. But basically, it slows down your heartbeat, it slows down your flow. And then I breathe really, really deeply. I breathe through my stomach, because we usually do chest breaths when we're feeling nervous or anxious. So you breathe out up here. And then when you breathe down into your stomach, you're naturally more relaxed. So that's what I had to do. And I did it consciously in the green room while all the women were talking to each other, seemingly having a ball, talking about how much money they raised. And I'm just sitting there, just absorbing everything, because I had nothing to really contribute in that group specifically, which made me a little bit nervous, because if I were able to speak and actually join in the conversation more than, oh, wow, that's so interesting, and asking them a question about whatever they just said, then maybe I would have felt more relaxed. So I just did the embodiment physically. How to stop overthinking, especially before sleeping? Well, that's hard. To me, I can't efficiently answer that question, only because I will fall asleep. Like, it just, even if I'm overthinking, I usually just, I'll knock out personally. And the times that I can't, I actually like to revert my attention towards somebody else speaking. So I'll put on a podcast, let's say, because then I feel like I'm learning. I think for some people that won't work, because that might make you more alert. To me, if I'm already in the state of sleepiness, I'll fall asleep to it, because something about people's voices relaxes me. And then learning something, so I feel like I'm being productive while before I go to sleep. But that's just me. I don't have a good answer for you. Sorry about that, Harvey. Yes. Oh, good luck on my journey dating. Thank you, Xylon. Thank you. It's crazy out there. How do you handle verbal bullies? This emoji is covering what that word is. I'm guessing from talking or doing some sort of trash talking. Do you mean to your face? I enjoy it personally. Okay. Yes, it depends on the situation and the scenario, of course. I'm more of a naturally combative person. So I enjoy it. I like to be combative. But I've learned to hold back on that because you can get into trouble, right? So you don't want to just unleash yourself, even if you are a combative person and you love that. Uh, Sometimes we could get into trouble, but typically calling them out is an easy way. This is something I actually learned from uh, one of the YouTube channels. I forgot, but if you call a bully out who says something out of pocket, says something weird, you could just say, "Oh, why would you say something like that?" Or "What makes you say something like that?" Could you expand further on what made you say something like that? Right. And if you just come at it from a more neutral standpoint and calling them out, typically that shuts them down because it reverts the spotlight back on them. The whole point of the reason why they like doing that is because they like putting the spotlight on you and they want to see an emotional reaction from you, right? That's their joy. They enjoy that. And so usually they might walk away. If you get used to something like that, then you could do spotlight back and forth. I think that depends on the culture you come from as well. I grew up in an area with a lot of Latin Americans, and there's a lot of going back and forth and talking trash to each other. So I am fluent in talking trash. But that goes back to the more you practice something like that. So even if it's simply calling somebody out, the more you feel comfortable doing it. So at first, your voice might crack and you might feel a little bit nervous, but the more you start doing that, the more you feel comfortable doing it. So, yeah, that's a good, easy one you can do. Okay. All right. I feel like there's so many moments of, okay, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on to the live. And then I see a question. But I think we are good now. Thank you so much for coming on. This was really fun. I should do this more often. Anyway, I hope you have a good one. And I hope you have a great weekend. Hopefully, I'll see you soon. I do want to do more content. So let's get that going.